early on, I was thinking that this was really pretty much a overblown kind of a thing, and that it really was only just a flu. And then I came to realize it really wasn't. There's something more to it, that we should be afraid. And certainly my generation, particularly me with my allergies and history of immune system disorders, that I'd be dead if I got the virus. So I'm very concerned about it. But so then I got serious. I started thinking, well, we need to do this, need to cooperate. And then I realized that, well, maybe that's not quite true. So now I'm kind of coming around 180 degrees. And I'm thinking this has been, if not overreacted, we've been overstimulated into thinking that this virus is something that it's not. Certainly it's something to be concerned about, but is it what it is presented to be? Well, these days I've been doing a lot of reading, and given that I've been under lockdown for over a month, I suppose that could be a dangerous thing, as there's so much news and so many articles regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Reading and correctly interpreting statistics on the COVID-19 pandemic is fraught with dangers, and it's nearly impossible to separate the news, the facts, the hyperbole, and the distortion. I concentrated on some of the science rather than the news, so let's just look at some of the numbers that have been thrown at us. Many sourced from CDC website and other reputable sources. Okay, less than 20% of the people who get the virus develop serious or life-threatening symptoms. Of the hospitalizations, 30 to 70% are over the age of 75. In the general population, a typical 20-year-old has about a 1% chance of hospitalization, and an over 80-year-old has a 19% chance of hospitalization. 50 to 70% of people who contract the virus are asymptomatic. The death rate for all people infected, not to be confused with people tested, lies between 0.01% and 0.07%. The risk of death is near zero for people under 40. Some interesting conclusions can be drawn from just those statistics. Keeping in mind the total percentage of the world population that will actually get the disease. To put it in perspective, presently on 4/27/20, the number is set at about 3 million persons, which is about 3% of the total population of the Philippines. Some estimates say as high as 50% of the world's population will contract the virus, but there's no way to know this at this point. Here's some of my thoughts. I am beginning to doubt the overreaction to a virus that does indeed spread rapidly and insidiously by means of asymptomatic carriers, but one that only kills 0.07% of those infected. And that's the high estimate. Additionally, studies in different countries have shown 50 to 70% of infected are completely asymptomatic. So we are panicking over the 20% at risk to a mild, serious, flu-like illness, most of which do not require hospitalization. I get the fact that all this is supposedly to take the burden off the national healthcare systems and to keep hospitals from being overwhelmed. But that is only the case in extreme examples in urban areas like Italy, Spain, France, and in New York in the US, and others, on which the media has obsessed. Looking at the deaths, most deaths, if not all, are among a group of people who have weakened immune system or pre-existing conditions that were the actual cause of death. These comorbidities are an important part of the picture not often presented in the media. The virus may have been a catalyst, but in some cases, not the actual cause of death. All countries do not report deaths in the same way. Germany, for example, says if you die of a heart attack while positive for COVID-19, you died of a heart attack. Italy, on the other hand, says if you died from any cause while testing positive for the virus killed you. The largest number of deaths in Italy were in the over 80 population. Of the 23,576 coronavirus deaths subject of this study in Italy, approximately 83% were patients aged 70 years old and older. The price we are paying for this overreaction and inappropriate, in my mind, response is a near collapse of economic systems and a loss of personal freedoms and liberties, some of which we may never get back. Those countries that have supposedly beat the virus will either have to maintain their present diligence forever or indefinitely and ban foreign travel indefinitely, or they will just be subject to infection at a later date. As an example of this, San Francisco during the 1918 flu pandemic took stringent proactive measures to protect the city, closing schools, requiring masks, closely limiting entry and egress to and from the city. They largely escaped the pandemic. On the first wave, when the virus came around the next year, they assumed they had escaped it and were devastated by the second wave infection. This second wave was a mutated form of the virus and was more deadly than the first. Mutation is an important factor. It has been established that COVID-19 mutates significantly more slowly than other corona SARS-type viruses. Rapid mutation makes for a potentially more long-lasting event as a virus adapts quickly to a changing population. COVID, by mutating more slowly, has a disadvantage when it comes to sustaining its infectious qualities. Some immunologists think by slowing the spread of COVID or trying to eliminate it, it will allow the virus extra mutation time and a chance to become more virulent. Should a vaccine be developed in the interim, yes, that will mitigate the effects of the virus and assist in establishing herd immunity. But the question is, how long will that take? Perhaps it would have been better to have isolated the at-risk portion of the population, educated the rest as to proper hygiene, social behaviors, limited mass gathering, and let society continue in a modified form. With regards to testing, I don't want to come off as anti-testing. It's a valuable tool when used responsibly and universally, applied in the same ways and with the same fervor worldwide. In the context of slowing the virus spread, it is useful. The issue I have with test results is the way they are used in the media. The numbers of cases of COVID-19 is largely based on test results, but each country, region, and even city has different criteria for testing. And test kits are not evenly distributed or used effectively around the world. Korea tested aggressively, and their numbers spiked early in their COVID epidemic. In the US, test kits have not been made available to many areas and were withheld by the CDC in some instances, resulting in an inaccurate picture of the spread of the virus. The upshot is none of the figures relating to numbers of cases are accurate, and if that is so, comparing figures is pointless. In addition, testing has become the inaccurate barometer for taking more stringent action. As our statistics-based calculation of how many infected relies on the amount of testing, not actual infections, some regions and countries who are slow to get testing underway see a false spike of number of cases as testing improves in their area, only causing more panic among people and also authorities. As far as I'm concerned, testing for purposes of confirming and tracking cases is valid. For estimating the total number of infections, useless in the context of even 50% of the infected being asymptomatic. You might as well double or triple those numbers. Antibody tests, if reliable, will be the best way to determine the depth of the pandemic, but they're not quite ready to go yet. If you accept the virus can't be stopped, only slowed, then eventually the same results will occur with regards to number of deaths. Much about this virus has been overblown or exaggerated without putting it in context with other similar diseases. And while it is true the sudden spike in critically ill is a burden on national healthcare systems, the draconian measures to halt society and economies have been devastating in itself and in some ways not reversible. Several myths seem to abound. Number one, we can stop the virus with social controls. Number two, it kills or makes severely ill everyone who gets it. 3, a vaccine is a cure or a way to kill the virus. None of these are true. Plans to limit the effects of the disease on society should be, or should have been, put in place, but in a sensible way. Isolate the at-risk populations, the elderly and those with pre-existing conditions or immune system disorders, limit mass gatherings, educate people, as has been done, on proper hygiene techniques and personal distancing in public areas. People will die. But the real question is, will more people die with sensible efforts to keep people healthy, or with an impossible to implement and maintain severe lockdown of people and economies? The unspoken conundrum of these lockdowns is, no one has a clear answer on how to exit these restrictive quarantines. If the net result is the virus is just lurking on the other side ready to reinfect, then it seems counterproductive. Once the vaccine is produced, that will be the time when there is hope for further establishing herd immunity. But can we or should we continue these measures until that time? We won't really know until we're on the other side of all this. Panic is profitable both for the media and the government. A panicked and fearful population is an opportunity for governments to take advantage of the cover of COVID to seize power, force agendas, and manipulate power structures to their advantage. So between the media seeing lots of eyeballs on the TV screen or computer monitor, generating record advertising revenues, and revenues are up, and our astute politicians not able to resist exploiting the situation for their own advantage, we are being victimized and unwittingly manipulated into a pandemic state of mind. The pandemic arguably exists, but has been given all sorts of attributes it does not have, especially if you're tuned into the media. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but I can see clearly through some of the presented reality we are being asked to accept. Okay, that was my written statement, so to speak, and maybe it was better to have read it than to just go off the cuff. But it's something I wanted to say, and I hope you all can understand the point of view. I don't expect everyone to agree with it, and I'm not even sure I agree with it. But these are some observations I've had. I just have a difficult time accepting some of the things we've been told. I keep thinking of some things that I want to add from time to time, and as I watch this thing that I produced, this little exercise in my COVID diary or a journal or whatever you want to call it, a video journal, I keep thinking of other things, and some of the things I'm thinking about regard the unique aspects of this virus. Now, you read that, okay, this is a more dangerous virus because it does certain things, and I understand there are some differences between this and normal, whatever a normal flu virus would be. Some have to do with the immune system overreacting, or what they call it, some kind of storms or something. I can't remember the term, but it's where the immune system overreacts, not only attacks the virus, but attacks the tissue surrounding the virus, much like an immune system disorder, AIDS or something like that. And from what I've read, that this virus does have a couple of components that are similar to the AIDS virus. Now, I've stayed away from the idea that this was an engineered in a laboratory virus just because I don't buy into conspiracy theories. But if I were going to invent a virus, this is a near perfect virus for devastating societies. It doesn't kill a large percentage of the population. It has a high percentage of asymptomatic carriers, which prohibits proper tracking and control of the virus. And it's only concentrating on a certain population, basically old people or people with compromised immune systems. So now, again, I'm not proposing, or I don't think that this is the case. It could be. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not going to buy into this conspiracy. But it's almost a perfect storm. It's panicked the world. It's gotten the world to shut down, close in on itself. And societies are really killing themselves over and tripping over themselves, trying to contain this virus, which, like most viruses, is not containable. We can mitigate the damage by taking some social measures, and eventually a vaccine will help us to develop herd immunity. It's not a cure, of course. So, I mean, we're going to have to weather the storm. And I'm in the position, I'm in the age group and in the comorbidity group. I mean, I have a couple of health issues that put me in that high-risk group. I mean, I'm not speaking from the position of a person who's not going to be affected. I mean, this virus will definitely kill me if I get it. I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, I've weathered a lot of other storms in my life, and if this kills me, then it kills me. But if I get a normal flu, it'll kill me. I mean, that's pretty much, there's a good chance of that. So I'm not more concerned over this flu than any other flu. But I'm willing to take precautions. I know how to protect myself best I can, and the rest is left up to nature or God or whatever belief system you believe in. But with all that, I mean, this is continuing thoughts on the best way to see our way through this. And as I see it, the numbers don't add up to the level of panic that we're seeing in our society. And the problem is there's so much disinformation, half information, half truths. People are looking for answers. They want facts, and there's a lot of false information out there and a lot of exaggeration over some of the aspects of this virus. So I really don't know what to make of it, but I still feel the same way. I think that this virus is dangerous. It's unique. It has properties that other viruses don't, but some of the properties that have been proposed that it has that others don't, others do. I mean, for example, there's a neural aspect to this infection where it can actually have effects on your brain. Well, other viruses do the same. For example, the numbing of your taste and sense of smell. Other viruses do this as well. And dizziness. I mean, these are all neurological side effects. Whether that's unique to COVID is doubtful. Recent anecdotal studies of people having blood clotting, younger people having blood clotting. I haven't seen any data that indicates that that's significant, or just a small percentage. And again, it gets down to where the media is focusing on every straw of information, and they're blowing it up and saying, "Oh, young people are dying of blood clots." Well, we don't know. I don't know. We don't know if that's just anecdotal evidence. A few percent of people. I mean, again, we're in the middle of this. We don't know. It's kind of difficult to speculate, but. Okay, I guess that's it for today's addendum. I'm getting tired of putting this t-shirt back on so I match. So next time I'm going to change t-shirts. So here we go again. As promised, new t-shirt. Didn't brush my hair. It's my natural hair. Differences between death rates and number of deaths. Well, it seems obvious, but I think made a mistake or glossed over the differences in all my other musings before. Can we change the number of deaths? Yeah, I think we can do that. If we protect the number of people who are vulnerable to this COVID, then we can eliminate those people, or prevent those people from dying. The death rate of COVID remains the same, but death rates are calculated for a given period of time, not for all of eternity, or it's a time equation. Numbers over time divided by the population at that time. So generally speaking, when they figure the death rate, they take number of deaths times 10 to the nth power, which 10 to the nth power is usually either 1,000 or 100,000, and they're used for different purposes. So let's say that for deaths of a specific cause, they usually, normally in the US anyway, use the 100,000 figure. So these are mathematical calculations based on that formula. So death rate has to have a time span. So whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or for the entire length of a given event, such as a COVID infection or something. That's the difference. So the number of deaths, yes, we can multiply by sheltering in place and protecting the vulnerable portion of the population. The number of deaths can be reduced. The death rate is only affected by time and population. I think that's how it's, I think that's the difference. So we can't stop the disease. We can slow it down. There's some argument as to whether slowing it down is advantageous or not. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But anyway, I wanted to add that little part about death rate versus number of deaths. Now, an interesting thing that you might consider is, okay, take the death rate for the average population between the ages of 75 and 90 in a given time period, say a year, and then after the fact, or during a particular time span in the middle of an event like COVID, find out what the death rate for that same age group would be, and subtract the difference and see if how significant that is. Now there's the number. Nobody's talking about that number yet. But as a teacher by profession and a student by nature, I'm always looking for answers and truthful answers, and I just wanted to bring that up and clarify it, because it gets a little muddied when you start talking all these numbers and you don't think about the big picture, you don't consider other numbers that affect those numbers. And for the general public, the shit that they're being fed, it's just, the stuff coming out of the media is detached statistics that have no attachment to any other reality, and it's just mind-boggling. And I don't expect that the general population is going to have any comprehension or need to comprehend this. Governments like populations to be malleable and to do what they're told. We have become a population of sheep, I think, and by nature of societies, that's pretty much the way it's always been. You have the privileged few and then the sheeples who follow along. But the problem I see is that there's just a diminished capacity for critical thinking in our world today. Nobody wants to look at all the facts, divorce themselves from their political affiliations in order to see something that might be obvious, or something that might not be obvious but might be true. So I've always considered myself a, say, left-wing or a liberal thinking person. I'm willing to accept things that seem true. And this, even though what I have kind of said might on the surface seem to agree with what the government in the US is saying, if you look at what I'm saying, it's not in agreement at all with any of that, because of the motives behind the government and how they do things. So, the government is willing to trade off deaths for political stability and political power. And the medical community, in all their good intentions, seems to want to prevent deaths for the good of society. So then you got Anthony Fauci, who kind of caught in the middle. He's been touted as the foil for Trump, but actually he's part of the Trump organization. It's almost like good cop, bad cop, because Fauci has been caught contradicting himself rather significantly. And I don't know the exact figures, but Fauci early on, before the COVID crisis really struck the U.S., came out and said in one of his research papers, and he is a research scientist, that the death rate for COVID would be about 0.01%. Later on, as a spokesperson for the Trump administration, he changed that to somewhere higher, and I don't remember the figure. So he's kind of ameliorated his findings to suit the times. And the other thing that they've done in the U.S. with regards to numbers of deaths is they early on came up with these huge numbers. 200,000 could die, or whatever. And then when the actual figures come out, 60,000, then the leaders come out and say, oh, look, see, we're doing real good. Only 60,000 have died. So it's just, it's this manipulation of numbers to control the news, control the information, and to manipulate the population, which is really irritating. No one's taking the time to think for themselves, to look at these factors, to look at some of the real numbers. And I'm no expert. I don't claim to have any answers, but that's today's update. Maybe that's the last one. I don't know.